Hello everyone, tonight we are following something strange through a rainforest that no longer exists, stepping carefully through the underbrush of time. The air hums with gnats, the ground swells with water, and above you the trees are holding their breath. It's the wet season again. And your last molar, the one that had been hanging on since your juvenile years, finally cracked in two last night while you were trying to gnaw a rotting cycad root. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And tell me where you are and what time it is where you're watching this from. I want to know who's joining me in the dark. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along a waterlogged trail with your jaw hanging slightly loose, tongue probing the gum line, where a familiar shape used to sit. Your face feels lopsided. A tooth isn't supposed to leave behind so much silence. And now with this new vacancy in your mouth, everything you eat has to go down smooth or not at all. The others haven't noticed yet. You're part of a slow herd migrating upriver past knotted roots and nests soaked into mud. You keep your head low, pretending to graze, though you're mostly swallowing whatever's soft. Mushrooms, fern hearts, a squashed crab someone else stepped on. Your old favorites, tough cycads, barky horsetails. Fibrous seed pods are now painful just to look at. Chewing is over. It's swallowing season now. Up ahead, the matriarch gives a low snort and signals a turn toward higher ground. You follow, limping slightly, though not from your legs. A dull ache pulses behind your eye where that cracked tooth's root is leaking something ancient and angry into your blood. Infection, maybe. Or maybe just shame. Because here's the thing you used to bite like a hero. Your teeth made sounds that sent smaller creatures running. Now they just make gaps. You pause beside a wide puddle that mirrors your face. There's moss on your snout and blood in your spit, but something else too. An outline. A beak not quite. But your lips are pulling tighter over your gums than they used to. The flesh has nowhere else to go. Your mouth is learning to hide its weakness. You glance at a young one nearby. He's too busy gumming a slimy snail to notice you studying him. He doesn't have teeth yet, or maybe he never will. His mouth clicks like a tortoise's. There's no crunch, no tear, but he swallows, shrugs, and moves on. You wonder if that's the future. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when every meal started with violence, every bite a declaration. But the forest has changed. Rain lasts longer now. Floods wash away carcasses before you get to them. The plants are squishier, smellier, more fungal than floral. And your cousins, those long-necked, tiny-brained tanks up the ridge, have stopped chewing entirely. They just pick the softest leaves and trust their stomachs to sort it out. Some even swallow rocks. You remember one of the old-timers mumbling, "Once nature keeps the teeth sharp until the meals get boring." Then he sneezed out a beetle and died 2 weeks later. No one really liked him. You shift your weight and try again, tugging a dangling vine with your claws, testing it against your new gum line. It's mushy, slimy, tasteless, but it slides down without protest. A few swallows later, your belly feels heavier. Not fuller, just weighted with compromise. In the trees above, you hear the cackling calls of early birds. They've already solved this problem, lost their teeth ages ago, and never looked back. Beaks, gizzards, worms, done. They're efficient, smug, and annoyingly cheerful about it. You glare at one who's watching you from a high perch. It tilts its head, then drops a piece of something it splashes by your foot. An offering or an insult? Hard to tell. Historians still debate whether this shift from teeth to beaks to rocks and bile was a sign of brilliance or just resignation. Did evolution get tired of biting? Or did it just realize chewing was kind of overrated? The sky rumbles. Rain's coming again. You move with the herd, stepping around the bog, thinking of ancestors whose skulls you've seen buried in the cliffside jawbones, sharp as knives, fossilized mid-bite. They look so sure of themselves, so confident in the permanence of chewing. But here you are feeling your gums pressed together like old leather, wondering what meals you'll have to learn to love now. Soft fungus, carrion paste, algae. You try not to gag. Still, you keep walking because that's what the toothless always do. They don't roar anymore. They adapt. They shuffle forward in silence, learning new textures, hiding their hunger behind slow blinks and swollen jaws. You don't need to chew to survive. Just swallow. Just endure. Just wait for the forest to get even wetter. The young one sneezes next to you and swallows a pebble by accident. He stares at it confused, then shrugs again and waddles off. Maybe he's onto something. You spot him the next morning crouched beside a log slick with moss. His head cocked sideways like a heron in thought. He's not part of your group, his scent is strange, and his walk is all elbows. And his mouth wide deep and lined, not with teeth but with a hard, gleaming beak. A chisel where a jaw used to be. You freeze. He doesn't. With a quick jab, he slams his beak into the soft bark and lifts it clean off. Underneath, a nest of snails squirms in slow confusion. Before you can blink, he's biting not like a hunter, but like a blacksmith. Crunch. Snap. Gone. One snail. 2, 3. A whole civilization of slime demolished in under a minute. You stare at him. He stares at the log. Mutual respect. He doesn't look particularly fast or fierce. His arms are stubby claws blunt, but that mouth, that beak could break bone. It could break yours. And for the first time in days, you realize that losing your last molar wasn't the end. It was an upgrade you just haven't figured out how to use yet. You follow him. At first, he pretends not to notice. Moves slowly, deliberately, like he's more interested in the terrain than your presence. But you've watched predators before, and this guy's not one. He's a cruncher of things no one else wants. Scuttling crustaceans, sticky larvae, things with shells and things too gross to name. You shadow him through a clearing where the ground sounds hollow beneath your feet. A swamp underneath waiting to inhale. He walks across it like it's solid, and you embarrassingly sink one leg into the muck and have to hop out sideways. He glances back unimpressed. Need a bib, his eyes say. You grumble and keep up. His beak glints again in the sun as he leans over a rock and mouths something off of it. You creep closer. Barnacles number turtles. Tiny ones huddled like plates, hoping he doesn't see them. He sees them. One bite and it's over. The crunch echoes. You wince instinctively, not out of empathy, but out of memory. That sound is what your own jaw used to make, when you bit into something big and it split under pressure. When your mouth did the work your body couldn't. Now that sound belongs to him. Later, when he pauses beside a small stream, you get your first good look. His beak isn't clean. It's chipped irregular, worn like a carpenter's chisel. And there's a faint notch on the side where something once bit him back. He doesn't seem to mind. You don't ask his name because dinosaurs don't really do that, but if you did, he'd probably say something like, "Does it crunch?" Then yes, you start calling him the bone cruncher's cousin in your head. Not because he eats bones, but because he feels like a remixed version of someone from the past. A scavenger who evolved into a gourmet. Historians still debate whether beaks emerged primarily for precision or for gross laziness. Did early toothless dinosaurs develop them to specialize in niche diets? Or did they just get tired of dental maintenance? You keep walking behind him for hours. He eats often and noisily. You, on the other hand, are starting to rethink your whole approach to mealtime. At one point, you find a cracked egg tucked in a mud bank and attempt to bite into it. Pain shoots through your face. You hiss, step back, and glance at your new mentor. Without a word, he leans over, taps the egg twice with the side of his beak delicately, and then lifts off the top like a lid. Inside goo. He offers you the first slurp. You nod grateful, though it tastes like sadness and algae. Gourmet, you mumble through the swallow. A weird smell distracts you, something fermented, rich, buried. He's already halfway toward it, sniffing the wind with confidence. You hesitate, then follow. The source is a rotting fish carcass half-dried in the sun and absolutely unfit for polite company. He pecks at the eyeball. You gag and step back. He pauses, looks at you and shrugs. Amateur, his eyes say. Somewhere in the background, a small mammal shrieks and disappears into the underbrush. The bone cruncher's cousin doesn't flinch. He's not in the predator business. He's a specialist now. The oddest part? Other creatures give him space. Not because he's big, he's not, but because that beak makes a statement. It says, I don't eat what you eat. I eat what no one else can. That night you settle into the moss beside him. The stars above shimmer through the branches. He doesn't snore, but he hums. A low throat vibration that pulses like he's grinding memory in his crop. You wonder if his ancestors once had teeth too, if they mourned them, if they felt as useless as you do right now. You wake up to the sound of chewing, except it's not. It's him cracking open another turtle and slurping the innards like soup. You realize then that this new world isn't built for biting. It's built for breaking. And your mouth is not obsolete. It's just behind schedule. Off to your left, a juvenile with stubby jaws watches you both. She has a broken shell in front of her and a confused look on her face. You nudge her toward it. Try the corner, you grunt. She bites, fails, bites again, then gets it. Somewhere in your chest, a little pride sparks to life. Because survival doesn't always roar. Sometimes it crunches. You spend the next few days trying to cheat. The bone cruncher's cousin. He's still around, always nearby, but never quite within conversation range, has made things look too easy. One jab, one twist, one pop. His meals surrender with a crunch, but your mouth is a different kind of battlefield now. You don't have a beak. You don't have teeth. What you have is desperation, 2 functional claws, and a headache that's starting to feel personal. So you start experimenting. The first attempt is simple. You find a large rock and a suspicious-looking fruit, maybe a seed pod, maybe a mushroom wearing armor. You place it on the rock, raise your foot, and stomp. The seed explodes sideways, most of it flying into your eye. Success unclear. You blink out the pulp and try again. This time you squat like a dignified herbivore and press the seed with your palm. It rolls off the rock and into a hole. You look around to make sure no one saw that. They did. A juvenile two-horn is staring directly at you, chewing a stick for no reason. Mind your business, you mutter. The third attempt is better. You wedge the seed into a crack in the rock, angle your snout down, and very carefully press your jaw into it sideways. There's a soft pop-a squish and a feeling of enormous personal achievement. Until you realize you've just smeared it all over your face and barely swallowed anything. Still, you're adapting. You begin collecting items. Smooth stones, hollow logs, things that look heavy but feel hollow. One rock shaped like a broken egg fits perfectly into the palm of your claw. You swing it into a gourd, and the gourd breaks open like a wet cough. Progress. It becomes a routine. Not hunting, not gathering, processing. You're a food technician now, a prehistoric prep cook with no job security. You don't chew. You perform operations. At one point, you fashion a little pile of broken shells, crushed fruits, and one unfortunate frog that hopped too close to your workbench. It looks not exactly edible, but survivable. You eat it like a raccoon ashamed of being watched. Historians still debate whether tool use in dinosaurs ever truly existed, or whether we've been mistaking broken branches and accidental footprints for intelligent design. But you know, in this moment as you grip a rock in one hand and brace your dinner with the other, you know this is innovation. This is strategy. This is what chewing became when the teeth gave up. Still, some meals remain stubborn. You find a crustacean with armor like regret. You bash it once, twice, 3 times. It squeaks and escapes into the water. You stare at the ripples and mutter something unrepeatable. The juvenile two-horn is still watching. Now she's chewing bark. You wonder if you're being mocked. Then a breakthrough. You find a fallen tree rotted half through but still solid near the base. Something's been hollowing out the center larvae maybe, or the local fungus that smells like wet paint. You scratch into it with a claw and discover a soft sticky paste. Smells awful, tastes worse, but it's full of protein. You can feel it going straight to your brain. You return to that tree 3 times over the day, smearing your face in goo, dragging your claws through the pulp, licking your knuckles like a misbehaving bear. It becomes your secret, your own little buffet of failure turned sustenance. Around you, the landscape hums with seasonal fatigue. The trees are dripping mold. The air is thick enough to chew if you still could. Even the insects sound tired. Everything is wet, broken, softening. You notice something else, too. The old ones in the herd, those missing most of their face furniture, have stopped trying to bite things. They press food against trees, let it ripen, then come back later and slurp it off the bark. One elder uses her foot to mash leaves into paste. Another stores damp moss in her cheek until it liquefies. You nod at them as you pass. They nod back. There's a kind of club now, the Non-Biters Association. Admission requires failure and a swollen jaw. That night, you try something bold. You take a smooth stone, drop it into your mouth, and start grinding it against the roof with your tongue. The sound is horrible. Your mouth becomes a drum echoing through your head. But the rhythm is there. You spit it out, pick it up, and do it again. It's not chewing, it's percussion. Somewhere nearby, the bone cruncher's cousin lets out a low snore. Even in sleep, he sounds smug. You dream of your old teeth, how they lined up like piano keys, how they broke open eggs and split bark. You miss them, but not in the way you miss a limb. More like the way you miss a childhood toy, something that once defined you but doesn't fit your life anymore. In the morning, the juvenile two-horn approaches your rock pile and pokes at a gourd. You show her how to press it with the right angle of her claw. She succeeds on the 3rd try. Congratulations, you mumble. You're officially old. She doesn't respond. She's too busy licking the juice off her fingers. The days blend. Your tools pile up. Your meals get stranger, and your jaw, though still sore, stops feeling like it's betraying you. It becomes a partner in your new method. A quiet, toothless helper. You begin to understand that biting was never the only option. It was just the loudest. You meet them in the fog. The air is thick, clinging to your skin like spider silk, and the underbrush has gone silent, save for the occasional drip of dew onto leaf. You're alone again, having outpaced the herd for a patch of fern you didn't even finish. But as you round a bend in the muddy trail, you hear it, not the roar of a predator, not the squeal of prey, just a soft, rhythmic tapping. You slow down, peek around the ferns. There are 5 of them. Not predators, not scavengers, something stranger. Dinosaurs like you, but not. Similar size, similar stance, but their faces are wrong. Sharp edges where flesh should be soft. Hardened ridges on their upper jaws. Beaks, but not full ones. Mouths carved by erosion and time. You step out cautiously. One of them notices you, raises her head slowly, then returns to what she was doing, tapping a stone against a pile of what looks like shelled fruit. Another crunches something between her claws, not even using her mouth. They look organized, calm, bored. One of them says something. Not a word, dinosaurs don't really do grammar, but a sound chak. A signal. The others stop. Now they're all watching you. Not with suspicion, but with that slow, judgmental patience reserved for toddlers and tourists. You nod awkwardly. Nice beak, you think, but wisely say nothing. They let you in. You spend the next hour watching, fascinated and slightly humiliated. This little clan, beaked, blunt-clawed, and deeply sarcastic in posture, have turned food into a science. One smashes seeds with a rock, then hands the pulp to another who rolls it into a little ball and drops it into a pit of water. A third fishes it out minutes later and eats it whole. They're not eating, they're cooking. And you realize something else, none of them have teeth. Not worn down, not broken, just absent. As if evolution showed up one day and took them all away with a gentle shrug. Historians still debate whether this group or ones like them descended from early parrot-beaked dinosaurs, or if their toothlessness developed in parallel. But what's clear is that they're not suffering. They're thriving. Their mouths have become tools, not weapons. You try to copy them. Find a stone. Roll a seed against it. It squirts out sideways into the mud. One of the elders chuffs a low laugh and tosses you a flatter rock. You nod your thanks, embarrassed. Later, a juvenile from the group approaches. She's got a cracked beak and a limp, but the swagger of a street performer. She places a cluster of eggs between you and her and gestures with her snout. Crack off. You accept. You try first. Tap, tap, splat. The yolk floods the moss totally uncontained. She winces as if watching someone ruin a beautiful melody. Then she takes one, pinches it just behind the crest with the edge of her beak, and Pop lifts the top like a lid. Show off. They're called the Crooked Beak Clan in your mind. A nickname born not of cruelty but admiration. Their mouths aren't pretty. Their beaks curve oddly with jagged surfaces and strange grooves. One has a beak shaped like a spoon. Another's looks like a chisel that got into a bar fight. But every curve has purpose. Every notch matches a task. There's history in their mouths, generations of trial and error. They don't roar, they gossip. You sit with them during twilight in a mossy basin that smells of fermented fruit and old mud. They hum when they eat, not as music but as rhythm. It keeps the group in sync. One of them tells you through motion and breath that their ancestors used to bite, but it was too noisy. Too violent, so they stopped. Violence, it turns out, is inefficient. You notice their claws are short-rounded, not for slashing, but for holding. Some even use their feet to pin food down while they nibble, like birds or elderly librarians. You ask yourself a strange question. Were they born this calm, or did losing their teeth make them this way? One night they show you their food stash. Under a fallen log covered in leaves and smelling like regret is a cache of half-digested meals waiting to ripen. Overripe fruit, rotten eggs, one half-mushed fish you'd never admit to recognizing. You're skeptical. Then one of the elders pulls out a lump, rolls it in a bit of ash, and swallows it whole. She closes her eyes, smiles. You try the same. It tastes like compost in triumph. The days pass. You learn their ways. How to shape rocks. How to feel a seed's ripeness with your tongue. How to hold something in your mouth and just wait for it to soften. You even pick up their signature gesture, a slow head tilt that means, "Don't try so hard, darling." You watch younglings copy the adults. Theirs is a culture of mimicry, not command. They don't teach, they demonstrate. And when you leave because you must, they offer no farewell. Just a gesture, the slow hand motion of someone crushing a seed. It means you get it now. You nod, you do. And as you walk back through the fog mouth full of sticky fruit and ideas, you feel something forming in your own jaw, not a tooth, but a habit. A way of surviving without chewing. A way of crafting food instead of destroying it. You are no longer just a dinosaur. You are a member of a new club, the ones who gossip with their beaks. You see your reflect again days later in a still black pool that smells like rust and moss. The water is calm, hiding nothing. And for the first time, you really look. The face staring back isn't the one you remember. It's not the gory ruin you feared, not the gap-toothed embarrassment that made you avoid puddles and polite company. No, your mouth has changed. Rebuilt itself in silence, cell by cell without asking permission. Where once there were ridges for teeth, there is now a slope. Where gums used to swell in protest, a smooth ridge runs across your upper jaw like pressed clay. It's not a beak, not exactly, but it's something new. Your lips have grown tighter, stretching into strange shapes when you press them together. There's a hardened line forming at the edge of your snout, A band of keratin, the same stuff your claws are made of. It's subtle but sharp. You press it against a nearby reed. It slices, not with drama, just success. Huh. You test it again on a vine. Slower this time. It gives way with a wet pop and coils to the ground. You feel an odd warmth somewhere between triumph and nostalgia. It's not the raw tear of an old-school bite, but it gets the job done. A quiet, modern kind of violence. You eat the vine without chewing. Just a long, satisfying pull and a few slow swallows. From a branch overhead, a little lizard blinks at you and scurries away. You smirk. Yeah, that's what I thought. Historians still debate whether keratinous beaks developed in response to changing diets, cooling climates, or plain laziness. Some say it was a defense mechanism. Others claim it was just aesthetic, a fashionable skull makeover. But standing there with juice dripping down your chin and a dull sense of power humming in your face, you know it wasn't vanity. It was necessity. You remember watching birds. Not the cute ones from now, but their ancient cousins, the ones with claws on their wings and a hatred of eye contact. They always seemed smug, like they'd solved something the rest of you hadn't. You thought it was the flying. Now you suspect it was the mouth. The keratin doesn't just sit there. It evolves with use. It hardens in the direction you press it. You realize that every time you've scraped a gourd or pried open a rotten log, you've been shaping your own beak. Not with thought, but with repetition. The mouth remembers. Later that day, you test your new edge on something a little tougher, a dry mushroom, leathery and stubborn, the kind that makes your jaw ache just thinking about it. You pinch it with your lips, press down and twist. It snaps in half. You look around, make sure no one saw your little moment of glory, then swallow both halves like they owed you money. You're getting cocky. In a clearing up ahead, you find a group of youngsters playing. Not fighting. Playing. They take turns tapping their mouths against rocks, giggling when it hurts less than expected. One tries to peel a bark strip with her snout and succeeds. The others cheer. It's adorable, also mildly horrifying, because you know what this means. They're born into it. Their skulls are already adapting fewer tooth sockets, flatter jawlines. Their bones are giving up on the old ways before they even get a chance to miss them. And you're the bridge. You with your half-chewed memories and semi-sharp mouth. You the last of the molars and the first of the slicers. A teenage theropod stomps through the brush nearby, all teeth and attitude. He doesn't notice the group. He doesn't even smell the mushroom stash hidden under the ferns. He's too busy chasing shadows, jaws open, hoping someone makes a mistake. You step aside and watch him pass. The younglings wait until he's gone, then return to their vine-slicing game. One offers you a chunk like a trophy. You accept. You even manage a clean cut. They cheer again. You try not to cry. You rest beside a log that evening, tracing your jawline with your claw. The keratin band is still growing. You can feel the pressure of it when you yawn, tight, focused, almost architectural. Your mouth is no longer a battlefield. It's a workshop. Odd fact. The same keratin forming your new slicing ridge also exists in the claws of mole rats, the hooves of ungulates, and the terrifying eyelid spikes of prehistoric frogs. Evolution loves a multi-use material. You hum quietly to yourself a trick you picked up from the Crooked Beak clan. Not a song, just a vibration. It helps digestion, or maybe just helps you not feel so alone in the dark. You think back to your ancestors, those swaggering tooth lords with jaws like anvils. You wonder how they'd feel watching you now, mouth-closed vines, stacked neatly beside you, working the edge of your own face like a toolmaker. They'd probably laugh. You'd probably let them. But only after they try the mushroom. It begins with a mistake. Not yours for once. You're watching a juvenile nosing around a gravel patch near the river bend, clearly hungry and extremely optimistic. He's too young for confidence, but just old enough to believe his body won't betray him. He sniffs a patch of grass spots, a half-rotted fruit, and then swallows a rock. Not intentionally. The rock was stuck to the fruit. He swallows, pauses, goes cross-eyed for a moment and hiccups. You wait for the drama. None comes. Instead, he wanders off apparently unharmed, and 10 minutes later passes something that might once have been a seed pod. It's pulverized, pre-digested, basically paste. And the look on his face, smug, satisfied, slightly gassy. You follow him. By noon, he's eaten 3 more stones, this time on purpose. Small ones, smooth-rounded like river pebbles. He swallows them like pills, then goes hunting for the kinds of meals you'd normally need a proper bite to manage: fibrous ferns, crusty seed clusters, spiny moss bundles. He doesn't chew, he swallows, then waddles in a slow rocking motion like he's stirring something deep inside. You hear it, a faint grinding sound, internal, like a rock tumbler made of meat. You catch up to him, eyes wide. He gives you a look, half challenge, half don't try this at home, and slurps down another seed whole. And this, you realize, is the future, not outside the body, inside. Historians call them gastroliths, stomach stones, a prehistoric invention used by certain dinosaurs to compensate for the loss or never arrival of teeth. But you're watching the innovation in real time. The idea that instead of processing food with your jaws, you just outsource it to your gut. It's brilliant, also deeply unsettling. Still, you try it. You find a pebble. Not too big. You've seen what happens when they're too big. One poor ankylosaur once looked like he swallowed a dinner plate and spent a week making whimy noises. You choose something modest, river smoothed, cool to the touch. You sniff it because, of course, you do. Then pop it in. It slides down. You wait. At first, nothing. Then a strange fullness. Not pain exactly, more like your stomach just enrolled in night school. You feel it rolling around in there like a reminder of all your recent compromises. You eat a handful of soft moss, then a chunk of bark you wouldn't have dared touch 2 weeks ago. No chewing, just hope. A few hours later, the bark reappears on the other end, less bark, more mulch. You poke it with your toe. Success. You find yourself on a slope overlooking the river. Others are doing it now too, young ones. Old ones, dinosaurs with faces like pancakes and tails like regrets, all swallowing stones with grim efficiency. One elderly sauropod has a pouch full of them, tucked under her chin like snacks. She coughs one up, inspects it for wear, and swallows it again. You're in awe. You sit beside a boulder and pick through the gravel like someone searching for a horoscope. That one's too jagged. That one's weirdly warm. That one looks like it judged your mother. You find 2 good ones, swallow both. The sensation returns heavier now. But good heavy, like wearing armor inside your body. You feel oddly protected, like you could eat a pine cone and walk away satisfied. You don't try that yet, though. There are limits to even your new sense of invincibility. Odd fact, some modern birds still do this. Chickens, turkeys, even ostriches, swallowing stones to help break down seeds in their gizzards. Tiny prehistoric behaviors carried forward into breakfast creatures. Every time someone eats an omelet, a dinosaur whispers, "I pave the way." You hum against something soft, rhythmic. Helps you think, helps you digest. You wonder what it's like in there now. Your stomach, a chamber of slow violence. Stones spinning against pulp. Food surrendering not with a crunch, but with patience. It's beautiful and slightly horrifying. A rock garden with digestive fluid. You start naming your stones. The first is Gary, the second is Mildred. You've gone too far. That night you dream in circles. Your stomach rumbles like thunder. You feel the weight of digestion not as pain, but as progress. No longer do you fear the cracking tooth or the half-chewed root. You found a middle path between chewing and swallowing, between violence and surrender. The next day, you see a young one choking on a seed pod. You lean over, show her your favorite stone, Gary, and explain with gestures how it works. She swallows a rock the size of a walnut. Gags, then smiles. It begins again. You and Gary eat a branch together, kind of. You never thought you'd bond with a pebble. Yet here you are. You stumble upon them by accident, Bones. Not scattered or dragged, not the remains of a messy meal. These bones are arranged oddly deliberate, laid out like a diagram someone forgot to finish. A rib cage still curved like a question. A jaw locked wide in what must have been one final, furious attempt to bite something long gone. You tilt your head. Something about it feels too familiar. You step closer, careful not to disturb the mud-caked skeleton. The jawbone has teeth, sort of. Not many. Most are worn to the root, the enamel thin to translucent slivers. The back molars are cracked, one twisted out of alignment like it tried to flee before the rest of the skull gave up. This was a chewer. And they lost. You glance around the site, more bones, two more skulls, both smaller. One has a strange notch across its beak-like front, the early formation of a keratin ridge maybe. The other has no teeth at all. You kneel beside the oldest one again. The tooth wear is severe. Flattened ridges, reabsorbed roots. You've seen this before in elders who pretended they could still chew when they really couldn't. The kind who snuck back to the hard fruits when no one was looking, too proud to swallow moss like the rest of us. You touch your own jaw. There's a scar there from where a bad bite cracked a molar 2 seasons ago. You remember the sound? The taste of panic. The moment your mouth became more memory than weapon. Historians still debate whether these broken jaws were acts of desperation or defiance. Did these dinosaurs die of starvation or stubbornness? Were they relics of a time when chewing was still sacred? You suspect it was both. As you move through the gravesite, something else catches your eye, fragments of what look like tools. A split branch polished smooth at one end, a rock with scratch marks too repetitive to be random. A collection of pebbles clustered around the younger skeleton still inside the ribcage. Gastroliths, like yours. You sit beside the bones, suddenly unsure whether to feel proud or ashamed. These were your people, your evolutionary siblings, and they tried. They tried everything. Teeth, rocks, sticks, time. But time didn't listen. You reach into your throat and cough up a stone Gary. He's smoother now than before, worn down by weeks of inner labor. You lay him beside the cluster, a silent tribute. Behind you, the wind picks up and you think you hear something creak. A tree branch maybe, or the ghost of a chewing sound long abandoned. You turn to leave but hesitate. There's one last thing. Buried in the mud just under the largest skull is something brittle but unmistakable, a jaw splint, made of wood and clay, shaped to cradle the lower jaw and maybe, just maybe, keep it from falling apart entirely. A primitive prosthetic. Someone tried to fix this chewer's face, and it almost worked. You sit back hard, stunned. Odd fact, early mammals, tiny, unnoticed creatures hiding underfoot in this very age would eventually invent dental tools millions of years later. But it seems the idea of facial support didn't start with them. It started here, with a dying chewer and someone who cared enough to build a jaw brace. Your throat feels tight. You're not sure if it's emotion or another stone working its way around. You collect yourself and move on, carefully. Respectfully. No jokes. Not here. But as the trees close in again, you mutter to yourself, guess they didn't floss either. It helps. That evening, you rejoin your scattered group. One of the younger ones is gnawing on a stick, more habit than hunger. You gently nudge her toward a softer patch of moss. She rolls her eyes, but listens. You show another how to crack open a gourd using her snout edge. She gets it on the second try. You don't tell her it took you 6. Later, as the sun dips low, you sit in the warm shadows, grinding your stomach stones in gentle rhythm, thinking about those skeletons, about all the ways biting failed, all the ways adapting meant surrendering something sharp, and all the ways your kind refused to go quietly. The sound of chewing may be gone, but the instinct, resilient, absurd, relentless, remains, just dressed differently now. It wears moss instead of meat. It sings instead of shouts. It swallows instead of tears. But it's still there, still hungry. You meet him under a drooping tree where the moss hangs like forgotten curtains, and the air smells faintly of old onions and freshwater slime. He's alone, chewing absolutely nothing but doing it with remarkable commitment. No teeth, no shame, just soft gums, steady rhythm, and a look that says, I've seen things you wouldn't believe and most of them were chewy. At first you think he's muttering, but no, it's a wheeze. Each exhale wraps around a ghost of a crunch. You approach cautiously. He doesn't move, doesn't even look, just keeps gnawing on the memory of food like it owes him rent. You sit down beside him. He smells like swamp and wisdom, which in this world are often the same thing. His face is ancient, not in the fossilized sense, but in the everything has sagged except the attitude kind of way. Wrinkles folded over wrinkles. Eyes clouded but alert. His mouth a collapsed tent. His jawbone clicks every so often, not from pain but from stubbornness. He has no teeth left, not even stubs. Just pale gums, shiny and smooth like river stones. And yet he's chewing a wad of something green and slimy. You can't help but ask, what is that? He stops, turns to you slowly, and says something that sounds like flavors in the memory. You nod like that makes sense. Maybe it does. He passes you a chunk. It's algae, or moss, or regret. You take a bite. It tastes like pond scum and childhood trauma. He grins. You cough it down and realize he's laughing now silently through his nose. A low, dusty rumble that's mostly air. His body shakes like a bag of bones in a thunderstorm. You ask him how he eats without teeth. He shrugs, then leans over and picks up a small, slimy rock. He licks it, then swallows it whole. His stomach makes a noise like a blender trying to retire. Gastroliths, he rasps. They do the work. I do the chewing just to feel involved. You stare at him. Admire him, really. Because what you're looking at isn't a survivor. It's a commitment to a bit. Historians still debate whether this kind of behavior was common if old dinosaurs truly chewed without chewing, or if this was ritual. Muscle memory, a prehistoric placebo. But watching this old-timer perform his pantomime snack routine, you suspect it was real. Realer than your old molars. Realer than fire. He chews because chewing meant something. You ask him what it meant. He takes a long breath. Means you're not done, he finally says. As long as you're chewing, no one buries you. You watch him for a while. He rotates his jaw in slow loops. No food, no bite, just rhythm. It's hypnotic. You try it. Slowly, gently, you move your own jaw in circles. The muscles remember. They've been waiting for this. You're not grinding food. You're grinding ghosts. And somehow that helps. The old one eventually points a claw toward the marsh. There's softer stuff near the edges, he mutters. Young ones never look there, too squishy, too low. You nod, rise, and follow his direction. And sure enough, there it is, a patch of soggy vegetation rotting, but not foul. Easy to scoop, easier to swallow. You pluck a piece and toss it back. No crunch, no chew, just smooth. You bring some back to him. He beams. Odd fact. Modern tortoises have similar habits. Their jaws eventually lose sharpness, but they keep the chewing motion even after it stops being effective, like muscle memory tied to dignity. You sit beside him until the stars come out. He doesn't ask your name, you don't ask his. That's not how this works. But you do share a nod, a kind of club handshake. The Guild of Toothless Chewers. Around midnight, he dozes off, jaw still moving in slow, deliberate circles. You don't wake him. You just watch and hum and think about how chewing once meant power. And now it means persistence. Even when nothing breaks. Even when the food doesn't need it. Even when your mouth is just for ceremony. You chew because chewing is what brought you this far. You're crouched in the reeds near the edge of a drying pond watching something strange happen across the water. A group of juveniles, maybe 6 or 7 of them, trailing behind a predator like it's a parade float. The predator. A low-slung croc-snouted theropod, all teeth and swagger, is clearly not aware of its accidental entourage. Or maybe it is and just doesn't care. It's hunting. Focused. Muscles taut like coiled rope. Jaws dripping purpose, and behind it, a pack of the beakless and desperate. No teeth, no claws, just stumpy jaws and questionable confidence. They follow the croc's snout at a respectful distance, stepping exactly where it steps, breathing when it breathes. You know what they're doing. You've seen it before in the eyes of the very hungry. They're not hunting. They're borrowing. The croc snout lunges. There's a thrash in the shallows. A blur of feathers and foam. It emerges with something fish probably and retreats to a sunny patch of rock to feed. The juveniles freeze, wait, watch, and as soon as the predator turns its back, they move. Fast, efficient. One nips a stray fin, another grabs a discarded tail, two more start wrestling over a half-chewed ribcage like it's a winning lottery ticket. The croc snout hears the scuffle turns and growls low. The juveniles scatter instantly, melting into the reeds like shadows who know the rules. But they all got something. A sliver of meat, a chunk of skin, a wet, fishy victory. You sit there watching, impressed. This isn't theft, it's strategy. They're not pretending to be predators. They're pretending to be invisible. And it's working. You remember doing something similar once back when your teeth first started to ache. Following the big ones. Waiting for the bite. Diving in for the leftovers. You thought it was cowardice then. Now it looks like art. Historians still debate whether this behavior, scavenging in tight synchrony with predators, was opportunistic evolution or learned social adaptation, whether it was instinct or observation. But watching these little gum-snouted shadows dance around danger like seasoned pickpockets, you're starting to think it's genius. They're not hunters. They're readers, interpreters of movement, students of timing. You step closer. They notice you now. One hisses softly, defensive. Another glares, already chewing something that probably still had a heartbeat 5 minutes ago. You raise a claw in peace, no judgment here, just research. The croc snout has moved on, stomping back into the marsh to ruin someone else's afternoon. The juveniles relax again. One of them is using a flat rock to scrape scales off a bone. You crouch beside her. She glances at you, shrugs, and offers a piece. It's awful, but it's food. You chew more out of habit than need and swallow. She grins. You stay with them the rest of the day. Watching, learning. They have no true tools, no organized system. But what they do have is this unspoken choreography, a way of moving together, peeling scraps from kills, dodging attention like it's a sport. Their favorite spot is behind the jaws, where teeth can't see. Their second favorite is under the tail, for reasons we won't discuss. Odd fact, modern scavengers like jackals and hyenas have similar group behaviors, synchronized movement around active predators, pushing the boundary of risk without crossing the line. But none of them do it with such absence. These juveniles are practically air. Later you see one try to steal a strip of sinew directly from the croc snout's jaw. It works for about 2 seconds. Then there's a loud snap, a yelp, and the juvenile skids backward into the mud. He survives, limping but triumphant. You help him up. He grins, bleeding slightly from his lipless mouth. No teeth to break, just gum and grit. Brave, you whisper. He spits out something rubbery and shrugs. Stupid, his eyes reply. Maybe both. That night you sleep in the reeds beside them. Not quite family, not quite stranger. Just another mouth with no bite. And in the darkness, with the croc snout snoring somewhere nearby, you whisper a quiet truth to yourself. Biting was power, but stealing was precision. And you were starting to prefer precision. There's something unsettling about the grove. The trees here don't grow up, they lean twisted like they're all trying to get away from something. Their trunks curl into each other, forming pale green vaults that hush your footsteps and magnify your breathing. And nestled in this crooked cathedral is a herd unlike any you've seen before. They move quietly, slowly, with a kind of focus that makes you uncomfortable. Long legs step carefully around patches of moss. Wide eyes peer beneath ferns. Claws rake soil not to strike but to dig. You recognize some of them, they're predators, or rather they used to be. Once fearsome jaws now dulled, their mouths soft-edged and hesitant. They creep through the grove like ghosts of their own hunger. One of them sniffs at the base of a tree, then crouches and starts tearing at the ground with his hands. Not for prey, for roots. You step closer. They're plant eaters now, or pretending to be. There's something almost theatrical about the way they forage, like they're trying to convince the forest and themselves. A careful pluck, a slow chew, a grimace that says, "This is definitely food. I definitely like this." One of them spots you, a tall, narrow-faced female with a jaw built for killing. Or used to be. She tilts her head, chews a wad of moss, and raises a single brow. Ridge, as if to say, "You got a problem with survival." You shake your head, sit down beside her. She offers you a root, bitter, stringy. You chew anyway. These are the plant eaters' revenge crowd. Not because they're plotting anything, but because every mouthful is an act of ironic endurance. These used to be the top of the food chain. Now they eat bark, and they chew it. Badly. You watch one try to gnaw on a tuber the size of a small log. He bites, winces, swears silently, then sucks the juices out and discards the rest like a lollipop that wronged him. Another one, smaller. Maybe a juvenile has mastered a digging technique with her claws, scooping out bulbs and tapping them against rocks to soften them before eating. You nod approvingly. She ignores you. They're not friendly, not rude either, just tired. They've been surviving for longer than you realized. Historians still debate whether these behavioral shifts were transitional early adaptations during famine or permanent lifestyle changes. Did predators become herbivores, or did they just hold their breath and pretend long enough to fake it? You're starting to think it doesn't matter. The forest doesn't care who you were. Only what you can eat now. One of the older males sits beside a trickling stream and pulls up what looks like a bundle of reeds. He peels them slowly, chewing each segment like it's a delicacy. Then he leans toward you. "Used to hunt hadrosaurs," he rasps. "Back when my jaw could snap a spine." You nod. He offers you a reed. "Now I suck juice out of salad." He smiles, bitter and amused. His gums are swollen, his tongue has calluses, his eyes are clear. Odd fact. Some species of ancient carnivores, certain theropods, had digestive systems capable of processing occasional plant matter. Not ideal, but not impossible. A fallback, a diet for emergencies or for evolution. You chew the reed. It tastes like cucumber and loss. "Do you ever miss it?" you ask. He chuckles. "What, the chewing?" "No, the meat." He stares into the water, watches a bug land, then flicks it into his mouth. "Nah," he says. Meat fought back. You spend the day with them. There's a rhythm to their foraging, a grace that wasn't there in their hunting days. No rush, no chase, just patience. Chewing becomes less about function, more about meditation. Something to fill the silence between memories. You try mimicking one of their digging patterns. It's harder than it looks. You break a claw and get dirt up your nose. The juvenile laughs. That night they settle beneath a canopy of curling vines, their bodies pressed against the warmth of each other, bellies full of things that would have insulted their ancestors. You lie beside the narrow-faced female. She chews in her sleep. A dream chewer. You envy that. The wind carries the smell of fruit. Rotten but sweet. You smile. You've seen what happens when predators run out of prey. They become quiet. They eat roots. They dig and chew and hum and swallow. And sometimes they even smile again. You find them at the edge of a dried-up riverbed, strange ones. Not the silent foragers of the grove. Not the gum-jawed scavengers or the stone-stomach specialists. These are something else entirely. Taller for one. Ganglier. With snouts that curve too much and mouths that don't quite know what they want to be. You crouch behind a tangle of reeds and just watch. One of them is chewing on a root like it's a cigar, not eating it so much as threatening it. Another tilts its head and bites at the air, testing its own jaw like someone who isn't convinced it belongs to them. They look confused. You step closer. Their mouths are lined with a strange mix of features, part tooth, part beak. Not elegant keratin edges like the crooked beak clan. These are awkward hybrids. You can see the struggle fossilizing in real time. One opens its mouth to yawn, and you catch a glimpse half-formed teeth embedded in a bony plate. Tiny spurs of enamel like stalactites that never finished growing. The beak has tried to wrap around them like a tree absorbing a fence. You wince. It looks painful. It probably is. One of them notices you, blinks slowly, then strolls over with a limp-jawed swagger. The face is narrow eyes, alert, and mouth full of contradictions. Teeth that don't bite. A beak that doesn't slice. An expression that says, "We don't know either." Nice jawline you offer. He grunts and drops a cracked nut at your feet. You watch him back up, then lunge at it, mouth open, head twisting. There's a sound like two sticks snapping. The nut pops. His gums bleed a little. He nods like he won. You glance around. Several others are doing similar things, smashing food with their jaws like they're still figuring out which parts work. Some use the tooth nubs like grater blades, scraping plant flesh against their own mouths. Others press food to the ground and rub it with their snouts until it turns into paste. One chews sideways. You don't even know how. Historians still debate whether these hybrids were the result of transitional evolution species caught mid-mutation or examples of failed specialization. Maybe nature was trying out new designs. Maybe it just got bored. You sit down among them. No one objects. A juvenile approaches. He's got two visible teeth in the back and a half-beak in the front. His bite looks like someone glued a toenail to a spoon. He grins at you. You offer him a chunk of soft mushroom. He sniffs it, then tries to bite, and misses. The mushroom sticks to his snout. He wiggles until it falls off, then stomps it into the dirt and licks it up. Flawless, you whisper. They don't speak much, too busy experimenting. You watch one try to bite a crab. The beak gets in the way of the teeth. The teeth grind against the shell, and the crab escapes with an insulted click. The dinosaur just sighs and eats a pine cone instead. There's a certain beauty in their failure. A commitment to trying despite biology's indecision. Their mouths are not weapons. They're architectural arguments. You examine one of their skulls, an old one lying under a tree half buried in sand. The beak covers the front of the jaw, but you can still see the roots of teeth underneath, like ruins beneath a temple. Odd fact, some ceratopsians like Psittacosaurus had both rudimentary beaks and tiny irregular teeth. Paleontologists still argue whether they ever fully used either. Maybe they chewed with intent more than outcome. You glance at the one chewing sideways. Definitely intent. The group starts moving slow and coordinated toward a patch of sun-warmed soil dotted with low-growing shrubs. You follow. Their gait is odd, heads tilted slightly, mouths ajar, as if always on the edge of expression. They reach the plants and begin their ritual. Not grazing, not hunting, testing. One nips a stalk and shakes it like a rain stick. Another stomps on a fruit before licking it from the dirt. A third takes a rock, balances it on its snout, and drops it on a root to split it open. Beaks and tooth nubs working in weird, offbeat harmony. You get the sense that evolution is watching this, quietly taking notes. That night you sit among them in a crescent of stone, all facing a fireless center where the moonlight pools. One of the older ones steps forward and drops a dried gourd. He bites it, not to open it, but to show it can be opened. He turns to the group. Everyone nods. There is no roar, no feast, just a ceremony of awkward bites and tilted heads. A theater of mouths still looking for their lines. You participate. You take a dry seed pod and crack it between your lips. Half of it sticks to your chin. The rest spills into the dirt. Everyone nods. You nod too, because this is what survival looks like now. 1,000 tiny adjustments, 1,000 failed bites, 1,000 weird jaws finding their own logic. You wake up hungry. Not the usual gnawing emptiness of missed meals or poorly chewed bark. This is different. This is the hunger that comes when your stomach is full but your soul suspects it's being scammed. You've eaten roots, crushed vines, and swallowed stones. You've licked bark and gnawed moss and learned the fine art of beak-assisted salad prep. But today the craving is for something soft, simple, and beneath you in more ways than one. Worms. You find them beneath a rotting log nestled in the wet mulch like a pile of nerves. They're glistening, writhing, unaware of their place on today's menu. You hesitate. Then you remember the sideways chewer from the riverbed who winked at you while licking an ant off his own shoulder. You remember the crooked beak clan's fermented egg stash. You remember the old toothless one who chewed ghosts. So you eat the worm. It is predictably horrible, wet, cold, texturally insulting. You gag once, but it stays down. You try another, smaller, slightly less offensive. Then 3 more in quick succession, not letting your dignity catch up. Eventually it gets easier. You tell yourself it's temporary. Just until your jaw fully keratinizes. Just until the root stash grows back. Just until science gets its act together and rewrites your skull. But deep down you know this is the new normal. Soft prey, gooey eggs, rotten fruit with no bark to bite. A diet built on surrender and digestive shortcuts. You catch yourself eyeing a beetle and have to talk yourself down. One of the juveniles nearby is trying to suck a centipede out of a mud hole. You nod at him, slightly, horrified, slightly proud. Historians still debate whether this shift towards soft diets was adaptive brilliance or a mass culinary tragedy. Was this the dawn of efficiency or the death of flavor? Hard to say. You walk through a clearing and spot a carcass recent glistening surrounded by flies. A proper feast for someone with teeth. You approach it anyway. Not for the meat, but for what's around it. Soft tissue. You find a patch of half-digested gut trailing out like wet ribbons. Warm, slightly bitter, almost jelly-like. You glance around, then dip your head and slurp. It slides down with ease. No tearing, no chewing, no pride. You swallow and tell yourself this is survival. This is smart. This is the digestive system you were born to finish evolving into. Later, you sit by a stream and poke a water strider with your snout. It skates away smug. You lean back listening to your stomach tumble something slimy and unfortunate. Odd fact. Many ancient animals, including early amphibians and soft-beaked dinosaurs, adapted to diets of worms, slugs, and other gelatinous organisms during harsh climate shifts. It wasn't prestigious, but it worked. One of the others nearby is eating snails now. Not even crunching them, just sucking them out like a connoisseur of sadness. You join her. The snail fights a little. You fight back slightly less. You get used to the shame. Because here's the thing. They don't tell you about the age of teeth. They don't fall out all at once. You lose them one by one. With every new adaptation, every swallowed stone, every soft meal, every time you choose not to bite, you're saying goodbye to a piece of the old self. The one that snarled and chewed and tore. That self is gone now. What remains is a creature of texture and silence, of slurping and patience, of knowing that sometimes the smartest thing you can do is let your pride dissolve like a slug in salt. You lean into the shame. Embrace it like a blanket made of snot. Because you're not hungry anymore. And that's enough. For now, you remember it clearly. It started with a twitch in your jaw. A small, almost polite spasm just below your right eye. You thought it was fatigue. Or perhaps a leftover ache from too many seed pods cracked on bad angles. But it wasn't. It was betrayal. A new tooth was growing, which on any other day in any other age might have been cause for celebration. But not now, not here, not after everything your body had adapted to. Not after you'd learned to swallow roots, to charm worms, to grind bark in your gut, like a prehistoric food processor. You press a claw against your cheek. The lump is unmistakable, a fang, coming in sideways. It doesn't hurt at first, just itches. An irritated sensation that you try to ignore, try to chew through with nothing. But the days pass, and the lump becomes sharp. It presses against your tongue like it's lost and looking for the exit. Then one morning you yawn, and the world splits. Your jaw cracks with the sound of a branch giving up. You collapse. Not from the pain, though, let's be honest, it's awful, but from the sheer betrayal of it. After all you've done to evolve forward, your own mouth is dragging you backward like some ancient relic clawing its way back to relevance. The others find you under a bush, one eye half-closed, drool leaking from a mouth that no longer opens straight. They gather silently. One of the sideways chewers crouches beside you, peers into your mouth and winces. "Bad angle," she mutters. You don't answer. You can't. Someone offers a rock. You swat it away. This isn't a moment for swallowing stones. This is a crisis of identity. You're taken to a mud-walled hollow near the grove. They lay you gently in a nest of leaves and gourd skins. One of the elders, beak half-broken, eyes full of mossy patience, leans over you. She doesn't offer wisdom. She offers soft fruit. You can't chew. She mashes it for you with her foot, then drops it gently into your waiting mouth. It helps, but the pain returns. You lie there for hours, maybe days, drifting in and out of lucidity. You dream of biting, real biting. Flesh-tearing, bone-snapping, snout-shaking aggression. You dream of chewing the moon. Then you wake to find yourself drooling on a beetle. Historians still debate how common this was, whether dinosaurs occasionally regrew rogue teeth after evolving away from them. Some suggest it was a sign of poor genetics. Others think it was diet-induced stress. Either way, it was rare, and rarely kind. You begin to feel heat around the root. Swelling. Infection. The others dab your jaw with crushed leaves, soft clay, even spit. One young one tries to sing. It doesn't help, but you appreciate the effort. You realize through the pain that this new tooth is not meant for eating. It's not for survival. It's a ghost. A memory made physical. A remnant of a past you no longer belong to. And now it's ruining you. One afternoon you manage to sit up. The pain flares behind your eye, but you breathe through it. The old elder returns, offers you a stick to bite down on. You do. The tooth pushes against it, and then without warning, snap. The stick breaks. Your mouth floods with heat, but the pressure fades. You lean back, spit out something white and jagged. It's your tooth. The last one. The others gather. There are no cheers, just a quiet, solemn nod from each of them. A ritual for endings. You hold the tooth in your claw. It's not impressive, just a small shard of who you used to be. You bury it under a rock. Odd fact, some birds, your future relatives, have tiny teeth early in development, but they disappear before hatching. Evolutional ghosts. Bite dreams. That night you drink broth made from boiled moss and snail goo. It's disgusting. You love it. Your jaw still aches, but it moves freely now. No sharpness, no misaligned memories, just smooth gum. You hum softly as you eat, the rhythm vibrating in your throat. You're not a chewer anymore. You're something new. You lie back and feel the warmth of your own silence. Because sometimes survival means not clinging to what grew back. Sometimes it means letting it go. The skull is huge. Larger than any you've seen up close, bigger than your own body, with eye sockets like doorways, and a jaw that stretches wider than belief. You find it alone, half buried at the base of a bluff, where the earth has slumped in the rain, revealing this ancient monument like the land finally gave up its secrets. You approach carefully, heart thudding. Its teeth are still there. Not all, but enough. Huge, serrated, perfect in their terrible simplicity. Each one like a dagger still rooted in cracked bone. You walk along the lower jaw, tracing the curve with your claw, feeling a strange mixture of reverence and pity. This was the last chewer. You can see it now, the silhouette of its final moment. Jaw still open mid-bite. The back of the skull collapsed in a way that suggests impact, a sharp twist, a failure. You picture the massive head swinging down on something, maybe a rival, maybe a kill, only for the joint to lock, snap, and silence it forever. There's no body, just the skull. Everything else has long since been swallowed by soil scavengers in time. But the mouth remains. That ancient promise, I can end things with a single bite. You sit beside it and breathe in the echo of that power. The dry wind whistles through the teeth like a flute made for giants. You can't look away. Historians still debate whether this species was the last of its kind, or simply one of the last to cling to biting as a dominant strategy. Either way, the fossil suggests something important. The teeth remained, but the body couldn't keep up. You lean closer and examine the jaw joint. There are signs of wear, too much strain, too little support. It wasn't just age. It was overuse. A mouth that never stopped biting even when the world had moved on. You feel something stir in your throat. Not grief, not fear. Recognition. You remember the days when you'd lunge at bark out of pride, crack seed pods out of habit, and chew things just to prove you still could. You remember the hunger not for food but for the sound, that primal crunch that said you were still dangerous. This skull never let that go. And it cost everything. You find a patch of shade near the upper jaw and settle in, resting against the ancient teeth like ribs of a forgotten god. You don't speak. There's no one to hear you but the wind, and it's busy running through time. Odd fact: sharks, which have been around since long before the dinosaurs, continuously shed their teeth and grow new ones throughout their lives. But their strategy isn't violence, it's efficiency. Nature loves biting, but it loves adaptation more. You stare at the teeth again. They look so confident, like they were never wrong. You pluck a sprig of moss and roll it in your claw. Gently, you press it to the base of one tooth and let it sit there. A small green flag. A gesture of surrender, not to power, but to change. Because you know now that biting was never the final form. It was just one chapter. And this skull, this was the punctuation. You wander the surrounding slope, eyes open for clues. A few scattered bones, some fossilized gizzard stones. Nothing dramatic, no signs of struggle, just the echo of an animal who bit until the very end and never once learned to let go. Later you see a young one wandering nearby. Beak forming, gums pink, a head tilt that suggests curiosity but not worship. You wave them over. They step beside the skull, eyes wide. Not scared, not impressed, just thoughtful. You point to the jaw, then to your own smooth snout, then to a nearby pile of seed husks gently crushed with claw and stone. The young one nods. They understand. You don't need to bite to survive. You need to adapt. The young one sits with you for a while. Neither of you speak. The sky softens above. The shadows stretch long through the open mouth of the last chewer, casting stripes across the dirt like broken bars. Eventually you both rise. The skull stays behind. Not a warning. Not a relic. Just a reminder that every bite has a cost, and some teeth are better left buried. The rain returns without warning. No clouds, no buildup, just a hush, and then the gentle tap of droplets against leaves, stone, and your back. You don't run. You don't even flinch. You just let it soak in cold and constant dripping into your ears and mouth until you taste the sky again. You've come far. The trees around you are thin here, not yet old enough to twist or lean. The land is open breathing, and scattered through this clearing, quietly grazing, quietly swallowing, are the soft-mouthed ones. No one chews. No one even tries. Mouths open gently. Moss is taken. Roots are pressed. Seeds are rolled. Stones tumble in bellies like quiet applause. You walk among them unnoticed. There's no hierarchy now. No status based on jaw size or bite strength. The kings are gone. The chewers are gone. Even the sideways biters have stopped performing. All that remains are mouths shaped for humility, lips that press rather than tear, throats built for surrender, and silence. This is the land of soft mouths. No echoing crunch, no skull-cracking feasts, just the hum of digestion and the faint squelch of mud between claw and root. A juvenile nearby picks up a fruit with both hands, presses it carefully against a tree trunk, and slowly flattens it with her snout. She doesn't chew. She waits, then slurps. You nod. Elsewhere, an elder with a beak barely intact shows a younger one how to roll a gourd between two stones until it splits open like a sleepy yawn. The younger watches, learns, copies. No words, no need. You sit by a shallow pool watching ripples spread and fade. Historians still debate whether this was the end of chewing or just another pause in evolution's rhythm. Maybe teeth would return someday armored in new intention. Maybe not. You suspect they won't. You close your eyes. There is no violence in this silence, just adaptation. A kind of quiet that hums beneath every rib, softens every scar. Odd fact, when crocodiles lose their teeth, they regrow them over and over again dozens of times through their lives. But they never evolve away from biting. They are permanent residents of the old way. You are not. You rise and begin your slow walk across the clearing. The herd doesn't follow. They don't need to. The rituals of feeding have dissolved into individual routines, private solutions to a shared limitation. You reach the far side of the grove and look back. The rain is stronger now, the world blurs. You see outlines, shapes, movements, but not names, not roars. Just mouths opening, closing, humming. Just a land that no longer fears what it can't bite. You press your lips together not to speak, but to feel. The keratin ridge that replaced your teeth is smooth now, sharp in places, dull in others. It's imperfect. So are you. But it works. You take one last piece of moss from a nearby tree, roll it between your palms, and tuck it into your mouth. No chewing. Just warmth. Just silence. Just survival.